Hi everyone. Today, let's talk about China's economy. And then we have some charts to go over. And then we'll go over my results for the day and my positions going into Monday. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So starting off with China, they mentioned that China's economy is starting to open up. And when they do, we expect the Chinese government to prop up their economy quite a bit. They say as they move out of their COVID-0 policy, and despite the fact that they're expected to grow by more than 3% this year, and China's economy expanded by a better than expected 3.9% in third quarter, we expect this U-turn from the Beijing government to be very good for their economy, and it could bolster economies around the world. They say China's economy could grow by 4.25% to 4.75% next year, which is still far below their rate of 10% growth from 5 years ago and pre-COVID, but it is faster than it's growing right now. They say with China exiting COVID-0 policies, that reduces the odds of sub 2% global growth to 65% from 80%. So the world economy is still growing at least a little bit. They say authorities have already lifted restrictions on the property market to help stabilize it, and they are rolling out stimulus to woo borrowers. This is the point that I really want to highlight. If they come in and start propping up the economy with financial incentives the way that we did through COVID, this could definitely blossom out to the rest of the world and effectively prop up the world economy to some degree. The idea here is that we're getting a positive catalyst when there's not really much to be positive about the world economy right now. And if this comes out and starts to be a real thing, then it could prop up markets in the medium to longer term. Moving over to the charts, starting with the S&Ps on the hourly chart, the market did do basically what I thought that it might, although we did gap down. I did not expect a gap down in the open, but we gapped down not far enough to be a problem for me. And then we rallied into the open, and that was a great shorting opportunity throughout the day. And then we did get a little bit of a rally here at the end of the day. We've been oversold for quite a bit here now for 2 days on the hourly chart, and we did get one green bar of MACD momentum here in the after hours. After hours momentum doesn't always mean anything, but you can see that momentum has been fading here for a while, going all the way back to the 11 o'clock candle on Thursday. Going over to the chart, you can see we did get 2 cooling bars here on the MACD. If we get one more cooling bar at the open on Monday, that might be a point where we're going to see a little bit of a bounce, maybe a move back up into this 389, 390 area. We're not going to fall forever, and we do have some support. If you look here, we have this trend line that's been very stable for a while, sitting right down here at 379. Certainly potential that we could tap session on Monday and then get that rally throughout the day back into this trend line that we've generated through this downward movement. That would really be my game plan going into Monday. Jumping over to the NASDAQ where I did most of my trading, you can see we got that rally in the morning. I closed that put option that I mentioned I had going into the day yesterday for a small profit, and then I got short, made a decent amount of money throughout the session here. Did get a couple of pops to the upside here, and then I am actually positioned long going into Monday. You can see this looks fairly strong after hours here. Did come down right into the close of session, bottomed out, slightly higher high after hours. You can see momentum was pretty good here going into the close. Similar story here, we got some green bars of momentum on the hourly chart. And then we did finally get that oversold condition here on the 4-hour, which is usually a pretty good indicator that we've bottomed at least a little bit. Then we got a couple of cooling bars here on the MACD. Seems like we're going to get at least a little bit of a relief rally Monday. We got that pop that I expected in the morning. Like I said, I didn't expect the gap down, but we did get into that zone that I expected. And then I was able to capitalize from there. I would expect on Monday, we're going to at least move up into the 277 area, potentially break this level of resistance, and then get back into this 280 to 282 zone. And then at that point, I would expect to create a lower high and then get a continuation to the downside some point on Tuesday or Wednesday. Moving over to the IWM, the Russell on the hourly chart, similar story. We've been cooling on momentum. A little bit tough because momentum has been fading here, but the market has still been moving to the downside. We didn't really bottom until the 11 o'clock candle on the hourly here today. Then we had 3 strong bars of upward movement, similar story on the Russell, and I would expect this to continue into Monday and potentially Tuesday. Still going to look for resistance at this previous low, 278. If we make it that high, I would expect we'll find some resistance somewhere around 176 as well. Moving over to IYT, Not quite the same story. We did move down throughout the day, gapped down, bottomed out, and then rallied throughout the session, almost up to the open of day after the gap down. However, momentum on the 4-hour continues to trend to the downside, and we have not bottomed out on the 4-hour RSI. Jumping over to the 1-hour, though, we're still seeing that similar trend where momentum is fading here to the downside. We did bottom here today on the hourly. It's a fair assumption that transportation doesn't move quite as much as the rest of the major indices. A bottom here on the hourly chart on the RSI could be enough for that little bit of a bounce that we're hoping for on Monday. Moving over to XLK, similar story to transportation. You can see the 4-hour MACD is still moving down. We have not bottomed on the RSI, but we did come right into this 144 EMA and we stopped right there. And we did get a little bit of a bounce into that second candle of the day. Not quite as strong as transportation. Transportation did rally up almost to the open of that first candle. You can see it tried here. We have a long wick to the upside and then it kind of sold off probably at the end of the day. Jumping over to the 1-hour, you can see what that looks like. Rally from 12 and 1300. And then we got the one final candle where we came up to that 9 EMA and sold off from there and basically closed flat. Momentum not looking quite as strong here on the MACD. But as long as this trend continues, you would expect at least a little bit of an up move. It is concerning how slow this momentum is going. Usually you would want to see something like this where it accelerates fairly quickly down towards that zero line. Something like this as well, going back to Thursday, December 1st, you see this decelerate then it moves to the negative side, and then you get that continuation. So you have the topping formation while the MACD is slowing down. Did get a little bit of a pop here, but you can see the MACD was still signaling negative momentum. And then we get that continuation here on Monday, and that's really signaling that you're going to get that big down move. And then you get a little bit of MACD in here. You definitely don't want to be trading when you get a cooling bar, a hotter bar, a cooling bar, a hotter bar. That's definitely not giving you that signal that you're going to be wanting to trade that to the upside yet. And then you see this very consistent downward movement to the zero line, meaning that you should be picking up a position on this day to the upside. And then the next day you get that flip to bullish momentum and you get a big rally after that. That's pretty much how I trade MACD, and hopefully that's a little bit helpful for you. Moving over to consumer staples, XOP. We gapped down similarly, did fill the gap, and then closed basically unchanged from the low of day yesterday, sitting just below 75 here. We didn't get all the way down to support this week, and you could certainly argue that this is going to come up, retest the 9 EMA and probably the 21 back in this 75.50 zone, and then we would get that continuation down. It's definitely moving a little bit slower than I would expect. You can see we did get that cooling bar on the MACD for the 4-hour chart. Jumping over to the hourly, you can see we have a pretty consistent down move on the MACD going into the last 3 candles, which gives me an expectation that this is going to continue on to Monday. So we're getting pretty consistent signs to the upside, which is definitely what you want to see as a trader. You want to see those things pointing in the same direction, and that's what we have here so far. Moving over to XOP, I do want to point this out here. So we have very consistent fading momentum to the upside, giving you that opportunity to trade this to the downside. You'd be looking to get out about when this red bar turns a little bit faded, maybe the second bar here. You'd be looking to enter here, maybe on the pullback somewhere around 138. And then once you get 1 or 2 cooling bars here, that would be a trigger to get out. So this wouldn't be a great trade in here, but you would probably make at least a little bit of money depending on your entry. And then the hard part here is where you get this fading downward momentum and then you get the gap down. This would be a tough trade to catch here. A better trade on XOP would be where you have bullish momentum going in here. You get this one faded bar here. That would be a good trigger to enter. And then you could really ride this out all the way up until you get maybe 2 green bars here consistently. So that would be a pretty good trade. In terms of MACD trading, this day, 9 December, would not be a great day to trade the 1-hour MACD. When you have inconsistent momentum like this, it's tough to trade. Usually you want to stick to the trend at that point, which is still to the downside. So you could certainly argue trading to the downside is good, but you also don't have a very good point of when to exit at that point. And then you see very bullish momentum picking up. You have 3 bullish candles on the MACD in a row on the hourly chart. It's very bullish, and then you would expect that to continue, which it does do. And then, like I said, your exit would be once you get that cooling candle here on the hourly chart. In terms of direction for XOP right now, we still have cooling on the MACD. You did get that same setup here yesterday, and it did gap down from there. It's certainly potential that that could happen again. This would be tough to trade, and like I said before, when you have inconsistent momentum, and that seems like the good trade here. The trend is still to the downside. We're still well below that 144 EMA. It's worth mentioning that not all the EMAs are in order at this point. We have the 9, the 55, and then the 21. Usually you want to see the 9, the 21, and then the 55 all in order for a nice little down move. Very similar to what you get right here. So you have 9, 21, 55, and then the 144 all in order. That's generally signaling that you're going to get a nice waterfall sell-off, which is what you did get up here. And then if you look at the MACD here as well, zooming in, you can see you have bullish momentum. And then you see that crossover to the red side here. So triggering a very nice sell-off, meaning you could get short right here. And then you have all of the EMAs get in order on to December. And then at that point, it's pretty much smooth sailing to the downside. Moving over to top gainers for the day, we actually have U.S. Steel Corporation, certainly not something that I trade very often. Did have a pretty big rally from about $19 all the way up to $27, so big move here up to that December high. We've sold off like anything else here, but over the last 2 days, we've been very bullish. We got all the way down to $23.50 or so. We closed today at $25. This is nice. Bullish price action. Certainly tough to trade at this point because we have a high, a lower high, and then it seems like you're going to get another lower high. It seems like you're building a structure here to the downside. In terms of the moving averages, you can see you have the 9, 55, and 21, so it's a little bit mixed, and it looks like we're going to start tipping over. But you still have the 144 down here to the downside, down here indicating that this is still somewhat bullish. So it's a little bit mixed, but very strong here today when the rest of the markets were down quite a bit. For the second top gainer today, we do have CHWY, very bullish going into today. Gap down slightly from the close yesterday, but then rallied throughout the day all the way up to 42.38. After touching a low of 39.89, CHWY's been very resilient. The support continues to hold. We've touched it several times. Still a slight downtrend. Moving over to the RSI, you can see we're kind of getting close to crossing that upside. Still waiting for this to break out. Jumping over to the daily chart, you can see we've been in this wedge for a while. Formed that bottom, came up, retested resistance, touched that bottom several times, found support, came up, touched that resistance, and right now we're kind of grinding on this upside. Hoping for a nice little breakout to the upside. Still has not quite happened. Looked like it might have happened on 13 December, but everything looked like it was about to break out, giving us that fake out before the Fed meeting. And then hopefully, if we get a little bit of a pop on Monday, maybe Tuesday, then we can get a little bit of a breakout here and come up to that 50 level and touch resistance that we had here on 15 August. Otherwise, CHWY is looking very strong, almost touching that 15 August high. Much higher than the rest of the major markets. Moving over here to stocks below their 50-day moving average, you can see we have 3 days of major sell-off. Very similar structure to what we had here in August. So we had 3 days of sell-off, nice little pop, and then more big sell-off. And what do you have here? You have 3 days of sell-off, 2 little days of pop, and then 3 more major days of sell-off coming right to that 55 EMA, which is exactly where we touched today. It's worth noting here that on that August move down, we did continue straight down for quite a while before we got that rally. So we had 2 more days of downward movement, went flat for 2 days, and then we got that pop of 4 days. So looking at that count, 2 more days of down, 2 days of flat, 4 days of rally. Certainly don't know that it's going to happen exactly the same way, but it's good to look at. And we did just get slightly above the 21 EMA on that little pop that we had. So if we get 2 more days of down move, flat, and then get a pop up to that 75 level, that would be basically the same thing that we saw coming out of August. Looking at the MACD, you can see it's still very strong to the downside, not oversold conditions here yet. And it's worth noting that the oversold conditions were at the exact same time that we did get that 2 days of flat before we did get that pop up. So maybe we get 1 more day of downward movement on Monday, maybe 2, but it does still seem like the major indices are thinking about popping on Monday. Moving over to DXY, on the daily chart, you can see we're in this very bullish structure. As the markets continue to move down, the dollar continues to move up. We are right at resistance, the high at the same high from 15 December, and we're not quite overbought yet. Momentum on the 15-minute is still very bullish. Worth noting here that we were increasing, but just slightly. This momentum is basically flat for the last 3 candles, which is not uncommon going into the close of the week. There's generally just not a lot of volume at that time. What I'd be looking for here is another push up into overbought conditions on the RSI. Start to see that momentum fade here to the downside. Jumping to the hourly chart, it is still quite bullish. Probably going to get at least 1, maybe 2 more candles of hourly bullishness. Maybe that gets us up to that 105 level, which would be the same zone where we found some support and resistance before we get a little bit bigger sell-off to the downside. It's worth noting we still have quite a bit of room before we get to overbought conditions on the 1-hour chart. You can see where we are in terms of price action just above that 55 EMA. This could be a little bit of a fake out, and maybe we get a sell-off back down to this 104.50 zone after we touch that 105 area. But you could certainly argue that this is going to be a breakout and push significantly higher, which would be very bad for markets if you are bullish going into Monday like I am. So even though the major indices has a little bit of a bullish signal, the dollar is giving us some bearish signals here, and it's worth noting going into Monday. Moving over to JNK, gap down, went flat. Not a lot to mention here, sitting right on that 55 EMA. In terms of MACD trading, it's worth noting that you did get that cooling bar here on Wednesday the 7th. Then it cooled all the way until 12 December and then moved into the bullish side until 14 December. That would have been a pretty good trade. So if you bought anywhere on these two candles and then sold on that first cooling candle, maybe you were smart and saw that you were a little bit extended here on this candle and exited. That would have been a pretty good trade, even on the 4-hour chart. But otherwise, going forward, I would expect this to get a slight pop, retest that 9 EMA, maybe just the 21, before we get that continuation to the downside. Moving over to TLT on the 4-hour, we did break that zone of support, and this looks very bearish going into today. We gapped down. Momentum is building to the downside here. This looks like it's going lower. And perhaps we come back down and test this level that we've been talking about, sitting down at 103.60. We did test the previous low here already. We did get a wick, but we then continued down after that point. Certainly expect to come down and test this 105.50, and then the next level after that would be 103.60 like we talked about. Moving over to the VIX on the 4-hour, looking at the MACD to start, you can see we had momentum to the downside fading. We had the VIX rallying, and then we kind of went flat here, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen. You would expect this to continue to the bullish side if you would see the VIX moving higher. But we had two candles where we got a little bit of negative momentum, slightly more than the previous candle, potentially signaling that this is going to roll over and start building some more negative momentum. This is something you definitely need to watch out for. It's worth noting that the VIX did come into that 50 level and start to bounce here slightly. If you do get a bounce higher going into Monday on the VIX, that would be a good indicator that we are going to go higher on the VIX and lower on the major indices. So it's definitely worth staying nimble going into Monday. Couple of mixed signals on the dollar and the VIX, but the rest of the major indices still look kind of bullish going into Monday. Moving over to my accounts, I did very well today, up a little bit more than $1,100. Got my individual account to less than 10,000 down, which is pretty nice. Who knows, if I keep this up, I might actually get to 100,000 before year end. But this week was abnormally good for me. The markets pretty much went straight down, and that was fairly easy to trade for me. Looking at my positions, I do have quite a few puts sold here. I have one put spread. These first two puts expired today, worthless, so that's going to go away. And then I have one put spread from 273 to 263. That was for $1.15. Then I sold another naked put here at 272 for $1. And then I do have one covered call as well, going from 276. And those shares were bought here at 275.19. So down a little bit on those shares, which makes sense because this call is in a small positive position. But like I said, I still think we're going to be a little bit bullish on Monday. And even if we go flat, I should still be profitable with these positions. And I can always trade some stock around to do a little bit of day trading and help to prop up those gains if the market does move down and against me. Let me know down in the comments section what you think the market is going to do on Monday. Will the China economy start to prop up the world economy despite slowing economic conditions in the US and Europe? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.